Welcome to the Nutrition Mission Podcast.
This is where we're going to share information about nutrition and have insights into your own personal needs, as well as product information, as well as other information. You've got to be part of this nutrition mission.
This is the official Clark's Nutrition and Natural Foods Market podcast. And we've been helping people live better lives since 1972. We're on a nutrition mission. Join us.
Hi, this is Starkie Sowers. Welcome again to another episode of Nutrition Mission, the podcast from Clark's Nutrition. So today's subject is going to be about eye health. I'm kind of passionate about eye health for a couple reasons. When I was a kid, I actually had surgery on my left eye. I was one of those kids that was cross-sighted, right? And so ultimately what happened is they kind of had to go in, do a surgery, and like correct my eye so I wasn't cross-sighted. I used to wear like patches, all sorts of crazy things, stuff like that. And then later on, when I was about 10 years old, I actually went to visit my grandparents, and my grandfather actually had an assistant, and his assistant was like, older lady, especially for me being 10, I thought she was archaic, probably about my age, somewhere in the 60s, right? So that said, ultimately what happened is she had to quit because she had lost her eyesight and some partial vision issues or whatever. I don't know the technical terms of what happened, but she lost her vision and couldn't drive anymore. And so anyway, she got this health food diet that she was doing, all right? So she was like doing Dr. Christopher's rejuvenation diet. So ultimately, she asked if we would come over as little kids with my mom and sit down and have breakfast. And it was like sprouted grains and goat milk and carob and fresh squeezed orange juice and all this stuff like that. She used cayenne pepper on a regular basis and all these other different things and some different herbs and stuff like that. So basically what happened by her doing this diet and all this crazy health food stuff, she actually got her eyesight back. And she was able to drive again, and she actually went back to work. So it was kind of like this moment where I was like, whoa, check that out. There's something to this. My dad by that time was working out, was actually started a gym. And so, had a little bit of experience with a little bit of health food. My dad kicked all the sugar out of the house and all sorts of crazy stuff. So ultimately I was like kind of inspired by this lady, right? So as time turned on, I, started working in the industry, in the field, and throughout the years, there's been kind of an explosion of different things. And so what I'm just going to kind of go through a little bit of history about some of the supplements when it comes to vision and things of that nature. But then I'm going to also lay a little foundation of what's so important about eyesight. So here's some sobering statistics, right? So loss of vision is one of the most feared consequences of aging. No question about it. Me having surgeries as a kid, I always had a little fear. Hey man, I don't want to lose my eyesight because I went through trauma when I was 6 with patches and surgery and all that sort of stuff. But it is estimated that 1.28 million U.S. adults over the age of 40 have some issues with blindness and might go blind in one way, shape, form, or the other. Another 2.9 million have poor vision. 80-year-old plus have a tendency to have poor vision, usually about 10 to 20% of those individuals. That said, poor vision obviously is a serious concern, right? So let's kind of look at some of the basics when we think of the eye. We'll talk a little bit about the anatomy of the eye. So first of all, you have the sclera, which is the outer portion of the white part of the eye. Then you have the cornea, which is and behind the cornea is the pupil. And that basically the pupil is where the light comes in. So remember this when it comes to the eye, that the eye basically is like a video camera. So the area where the light comes in or the camera lens is specifically the eyes, right? So the cornea and the pupil is where everything comes in. So where the picture takes place though is in the back portion of the eye, which is known as the macula. All right, so the macula is ultimately the area where we get the photoreception. Now, you might be wondering what the color portion of your eye is. Well, that's the iris, and what that is actually what adjusts to the light. Either it dilates open when it's dark, or it closes up tight when it's light, right? So ultimately, in the back portion of the eye, the retina becomes a real critical issue. We'll talk about that as well, too. But ultimately, that kind of gives us just kind of a basic. Obviously, there's a whole lot more complexities when it comes to the eyes. There's eye muscles. There's also tear ducts. There's water in the eye itself. By the way, that's like a water contained area. So there's little glands and things of that nature in there. So anyways, most complications that we actually hear about typically are one of three things. Number one, macular degeneration. So macular degeneration is the area in the back portion of the eye, that yellow area that I was describing to you, that ends up being the photoreceptor area. All right. So what happens is, imagine like a television screen. This is as the light waves come in, and ultimately the little light waves are the things that actually hit these photoreceptor areas in the back. And so imagine like if you have a video screen that starts going out, and like there's one particular area on your screen that turns black. Well, that's macular degeneration. What happens is an area in that yellow pigment in the back actually gets a hole. So when it gets a hole, you're no longer going to get the photo. So what happens is now all of a sudden you're sitting in a situation when you're looking and you've got holes in your vision or black spots, and that's macular degeneration. It's one of the most incredibly insane things when you talk to people about it, because it's obviously one of the most feared things. So that's one of the most common things today that everyone's talking about. The other thing is cataracts. What's become a little bit different with cataracts is this, though. Cataracts, the biggest thing is we have surgery now with synthetic lenses that really, it's an easy fix. So people don't fear it like they used to. So what are cataracts, though? So it's on the outside, it's on the lens portion. And ultimately, as you notice, your eye basically is kind of like clear, right? And so these lights come through the eye in a clear situation. And this lens that's on the front literally are little protein molecules that are floating all the time. And so what happens is, if there's different types of what we call excessive amounts of glycation. So that's excessive amounts of sugars in the eyes. So especially like diabetics, diabetic 2, individuals that just have blood sugar management issues can end up getting what is known as glycation. What that is proteins and sugars mixed together along with oxidation or free radical damage from excessive sunlight, things of that nature, and not having enough antioxidants to manage those things. Those fluid proteins all of a sudden start to gel together, and that's a cataract. All right. So then, of course, the other one is glaucoma. Glaucoma is another common one. Glaucoma is actually, as I was saying, you've got water that's in the eyes, and what regulates it is the water in and out. So the pressure in the eye starts to gain, starts putting pressure against the lens and against the macula, and it starts damaging like the optic nerve. So you start losing peripheral vision and things of that nature. So those are the common things that we actually see. Obviously, dry eyes is another more common thing that's seen, or that people come in and they talk about. So what I want to do is I want to talk about a couple things. First of all, when we think of like eye health, there's a bunch of vitamins. There's also a bunch of nutrients that literally are needed to help to prevent eye disease situations. So I think it's kind of customary to first of all start off with vitamin A. And so vitamin A, obviously think of the name, vitamin A. Vitamin A, that's like the beginning of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, right? It's one of the first vitamins that was ever discovered, all right? And so when we look at vitamin A, ultimately what happens with vitamin A, it's needed to prevent night blindness. So what's night blindness? Well, in the back area of that retina, as we were talking about, there's these little rods and cones. Best way to think about it, think about like maybe a stick with donuts on it or something like that. And these things actually are the areas where we get the photoreception. So what happens is, if you don't have enough vitamin A, you actually don't get the proteins that are in those donuts, so to speak, to activate properly. So at night, everything's super bright and white looking. And so real common, by the way, vitamin A deficiency areas in India, especially with like vegan, vegetarian diets and maybe just malnutrition on top of it. What happens is, years ago, they said, hey, the way to treat this particular disease, because they didn't have a vitamin identified to what the situation was. They said, hey, we take liquid liver extract, put it in the eyes. Think about that next time you buy some liver or some beef, get the juice out, start putting that in your eyes. The other thing that would happen is they would eat liver, or actually try to get individuals to eat different types of foods that had other substances, which of course had vitamin A, which of course carrots and other different types of vegetables. Now, what's weird about beta-carotene, which is what you see in the orange pigments, and I've got some orange stuff out here. So what happens with that is there are basically two vitamin A molecules that are stuck together, right? So the body has to take those and basically break them in half. Well, if you have impaired liver function or thyroid issues, you're not going to do that very efficiently. So a lot of times there was issues with that. So back in the day, that's kind of what they did, is they knew that later on, as it was discovered, vitamin A was like absolutely essential to prevent night blindness. So that was kind of like, hey, if I take vitamin A, I'm good. You know, things are done. People, especially like in the 80s, would come in the store, talk to me and say, hey, if you're taking vitamin A, you'll never have any problems with your eyes. Well, guess what? That's not exactly the case. So what we'll do is we'll kind of move forward. So one thing to remember is nutrients are going to be absolutely essential when it comes to this. But I want to lay a little bit more of a foundation. We talked about the eye diseases, things of that nature. One thing to remember is this. regular eye exams actually are important. All right. So you say, hey, I don't wear glasses. I don't have any complications. You start hitting 40, maybe every 5 years, it makes sense to go to the ophthalmologist and have them just check things. Now, what they can do nowadays is they can actually dilate your pupils and they can actually look in the back at your retina and actually identify if there's actually degeneration starting. So you can catch this before it happens. And we'll talk about how to build the retina up and prevent complications there. So the other thing too is this, exercise. It's actually crazy. So here's what we know with exercise. When we exercise, we have increased circulation. The other thing that happens when we have this is we have reduced blood sugar or managed blood sugar issues. Right out of the gate, that's going to make a big difference on eye health. I know it's crazy, but believe it or not, in fact, here's like a statistic. We know this, that there was a study with 888 adults, kind of a fun little number there, against macular degeneration. What they found is that there's this macular degeneration, which is actually like a pileup of these compounds. Individuals that exercise, roughly about 30 minutes to 45 minutes a day, literally had like a 46% chance less of developing this substance that leads to macular degeneration. So heads up. Now, I know everyone's, I've already told you, hey, you shouldn't smoke. Check it out. When it comes to eye health, don't smoke. I won't give you the alarming statistics. Bottom line is, don't smoke, all right? You can have an occasional cigar or something like that. Hey, that's something you might want to do, whatever, but don't smoke on a daily basis, all right? Control the blood sugar. If you're diabetic, be diligent about making sure that your blood sugar is under control, all right? If you're not diabetic, make sure that you're not eating too much sugar. Anything that's sugary is ultimately going to start spiking the insulin levels and spiking those sugars in the eyes. All right, another one I wrote down here too, pay attention to blood pressure. Seems that like 144/82, which is still considered like moderate blood pressure, not totally high, but in that moderate zone. If you can keep it that or below, it seems like it'd be a huge issue. The other thing is homocysteine. Now, guess what? 90% of the radio or the podcast listeners are going, what is homocysteine? So homocysteine basically is this. The body has different types of vitamins that it uses for different things, and it uses with amino acids. There's an amino acid known as methionine. Methionine helps with a couple different things, but what happens is it kind of regulates the turn-on, turn-off cycle of building cells. So what regulates the use, so to speak, of methionine is vitamin B6, vitamin B12, and folic acid, all right? So if you're deficient in B12, super common, by the way, when you hit about 50, because your body doesn't absorb the B12 like it used to. Most people have what is known as atrophic gastritis, which basically means that you don't produce a substance that helps to bind to B12 and absorb it. So as you get older, believe it or not, there's a couple links to Alzheimer's and B12 deficiency, as well as other different things. But here's the heads up here. You start creating a situation where when there's a deficiency, the methionine actually metabolizes into a byproduct known as homocysteine, which is a free radical. And it literally starts tearing apart the vascular system, tearing apart the eyes, all sorts of other different things like that. So the way to manage that, by the way, is to make sure you're using some type of a multivitamin that's got B6, folic acid, and B12 that kind of work together. All right. So then, here's the other point. This one's always the worst point. Check it out. Diet. You got to make sure that you're eating lots of fruits and vegetables. As we go through the literally like reams of research, the people that eat more fruits and vegetables, especially vegetables, and I've got some little props over here. I've got some spinach. By the way, the fruit of choice that I have is goji berries, also known as wolf berries, also known as lychee. To those that are listening, those particular compounds that are in there, those colors, have different types of substances. We're going to talk about those, some individual compounds that are in there in a minute, kind of give you some heads up. But here's the deal. You look at the diet situation. Mediterranean diet is a great one, by the way. If you want to write to us or hit us on the website or hit us at whatever you want to do, we can send you out like just a little basic booklet on the Mediterranean diet that I wrote up. You're welcome to have that at no cost. All right, so here's what we do know is this. Eating fish, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. In a study with women, they ended up having a 53% less chance of developing cataracts, which is really kind of cool because females seem to be a little bit more on the lines of getting cataracts than men. It's like a 60% of cataract sufferers are females. So if you're a female, you really want to pay attention to diet. All right, so I threw the last one in. This one's really going to hit hard on some people, alcohol. Yeah, a lot of people have been told drinking alcohol on a regular basis improves your health. So usually what happens is you start with one drink, then it goes to 2 drinks, then it goes to a bottle. Next thing you know, all the health benefits are out the door. All right. So I'm not going to tell you those exact zones, but I will tell you this. People that drink alcohol on a regular basis ended up with more eye problems than those that didn't. All right. So that kind of lays a foundation. So then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of just look through a couple different things here, kind of look through some supplements and things of that nature that become critical. And then I'm going to talk about a study that was done. And this, if you're not using supplements, maybe just finding something that makes sense. All right. So before I get too far, remember this, omega-3 fatty acids are absolutely critical. So I bought some omega-3, brought some omega-3s here. My favorite omega-3s are the barleans. It's the liquids. The other thing is the krills. My body seems to digest those much better. Krill oil seems to like not burp up. The barleans is an emulsion. It's already like pre-digested, so to speak, so it gets into the system very efficiently. Omega-3s are incredible as far as benefits for many things: hair, skin, eyes, joints, blah, blah, inflammation, all those different things. But what it also does is it seems to reduce inflammatory processes in the eyes. So when it comes to dry eyes, it makes a huge difference. The other thing, it also seems to have a protective factor for the macular. So make sure that you're getting some fatty fish in on a regular basis, hence the diet thing, right? All right, so next thing that's on the list is this. As we were saying, B vitamins become critical. We talked about vitamin B6. We talked about B12. We also talked about folic acid when it came to homocysteine. But check it out. There's more. Vitamin B2, vitamin B1 kind of help to control sugars and actually prevent too much sugar from getting into the eye. So when it comes to a multivitamin, make sure that you're getting a multivitamin with all the B complex vitamins in it. Makes a huge difference. Vitamin C. Really cool study done by a couple different people. We found that people that ate more nutrients that had, or more foods that had nutrient amounts of vitamin C, 135 milligrams a day, had, ready for this, 43% chance of actually developing cataracts. 43% less chance of developing cataracts. So it's very significant, all right? That's not a lot of vitamin C. By the way, a lot of people say, well, I ate an orange today or I drank orange juice. So here's the deal, man. My brother has like 5 acres of oranges, right? So if you go out and you pick an orange off of his, you're probably going to get that 50 milligrams of vitamin C. But bottom line is this: your orange went through some packing house and literally got shipped by some truck from Florida out here, sat in a warehouse for like 2 or 3 weeks or maybe even longer, then it hit your table. How much vitamin C is left? Ain't going to happen, bro. So the bottom line is you want to make sure that you're getting a supplement, because oftentimes we think we're getting it from the foods. Not really a reality in so many situations. All right, let's talk about vitamin E, another antioxidant. Antioxidant vitamin E is very powerful, works in what we call the fatty areas. There's fatty and water areas in the eye. Has an incredible protection factor, especially for the macula, as well as those fluid mosaic proteins in the front. We're also going to get a little bit of details about that. Also, lipoic acid. Lipoic acid, a lot of times, that's a nutrient you're going to find a little bit separate. So a little side note on lipoic acid, very beneficial for those individuals that got some blood sugar issues. That's the one that you want to make sure that you're getting, because it kind of seems to help to manage the blood sugar throughout the body, especially in the eye. So then I also have some NAC. So here's some NAC right here. Obviously, you've been hearing a lot about NAC lately, especially when it comes to like bronchial health as well as COVID, all sorts of other different things, because it has an antiviral protein production that it does in the cells. But what becomes critical about NAC is this. When it comes to that glycation protein as well as the lens of the eye, NAC produces in the body more glutathione, which is the number one antioxidant. So here's the deal. Vitamin C, vitamin E. This is the reason why vitamin C is so effective, the reason why vitamin E is so effective, the reason why selenium with that is so effective, because it helps the body make glutathione. Well, glutathione is the antioxidant in the eye that prevents all this crap from gumming up. So NAC directly actually is one of the best things you can get to actually produce more glutathione. All right. So zinc, seems that a lot of things happen with zinc as well as with copper. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But the zinc, the biggest thing with the zinc is this. When it comes to the eye, I think there's like 30 or 40 different types of functions for zinc, right? A lot of those functions are necessary for different things that happen in the eye, making things work. So zinc becomes critical. By the way, a lot of people consider zinc to be an antioxidant. As you know, zinc is a mineral. It's not a vitamin. So I probably should have said that. All right. So then food antioxidants. We're going to talk about food antioxidants. As we start going through these food antioxidants, what's going to happen is you're going to go, oh, buzzwords. I know that one because it's popular now, right? So the first thing we're going to do when we're going to talk about is carotenoids. So carotenoids are typically orange. So I've got like a little pumpkin moment over here. So you can actually see this, carotenoid rich color. At the same time, I told you I was going to talk to you about lychees or goji berries and spinach and egg yolk. Okay, here's the deal. There's a compound that's in these things, and actually what it does is called Lutein and Zeaxanthin. So when we remember when I was telling you about that macula, that portion in the back part of the eye that's yellow, that's the stuff that makes it yellow, zeaxanthin. And ultimately what happens with the lutein is those lutein compounds have to be consumed by the diet. Their body doesn't make it. So a lot of people are starting to say, hey, these things are not only essential foods, it's like an essential nutrient. So what you'll see with this is when it comes to their supplementation with lutein. So what's nice about lutein is this, is it seems to have a dramatic effect when you use it for a couple different things. As we sit in front of a screen, I've got a screen here, I've got a screen here, I've got a bright light here. So ultimately what happens is you're filtering blue lights all the time. So me and Chris, we're talking earlier today, we're talking about gaming and stuff like that. If you're sitting in front of screens all day long, you're just getting bombarded with blue lights. All right, so the blue light, the filtering mechanism for that is the lutein. So what you'll notice is a lot of things are coming out. This one actually says right on the front, screen eyes. And what it is, it's roughly about 6 milligrams of lutein. We found out, obviously, consuming lutein on a regular basis daily prevents macular degeneration. So all this stuff rolled together, they do a study. All right, so the study is called ARDS. And so it's age-related eye disease study. So they ended up putting all these nutrients together: vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, riboflavin, zinc, selenium, chromium, citrus bioflavonoids, NAC, all these different things. Twin Lab makes it. It's called OcuGuard. Clinically tested in a study, and roughly lasts about 6 months to 9 months. Usage of this actually reduced the possibility of getting age-related macular degeneration. Serious stuff. Now, here's the deal. Most people that I'm probably talking to are using a multivitamin. You might be taking a little extra vitamin C. You might take a little extra vitamin E. You might be taking some NAC. You might be using a lot of these things. You're going, dude, do I got to use another pill? No, what you want to do is make sure you're getting enough lutein. So that would be the core ingredient I think that you want to take away. If you're using a multivitamin, doing all these things, core ingredient would be lutein. Make sure that there's enough in there, because lutein's kind of expensive. It ultimately ends up being a situation where you end up kind of getting it by itself. It's not that expensive, but when they put it in a multivitamin, it takes up space, ends up becoming a little bit more expensive. All right. So the other thing too, as we were saying with omega-3s, very critical for dry eye syndrome, but check this out. There's also what is known as omega-7s. Omega-7s, this particular one comes from sea buckthorn. And usage of omega-7s for about 3 to 4 months, actually, if somebody's got dry eyes, it seems to make a big difference. So you might want to consider using some omega-7. This is the Terry Naturally. It says omega-7 dry eye relief. I like that product. It's a phenomenal product. All right. So then a lot of you guys might be saying, you know, here's the deal. I hear about other compounds such as bilberry. Bilberry's a blast. Here's what they did with bilberry. Bilberry was like, you know, it's like cousin to blueberry, right? So how many people, by the way, go to the grocery store, hey, you got any bilberries? Well, of course you don't, because you don't live in England. If you live in England, you probably go, hey, dude, I want some bilberries, right? Bilberry jam, bilberry this, okay? That's like their blueberry of the moment, right? So there's these compounds that are in these blue substances called anthocyanidins. And these anthocyanidins, what they basically do is they're incredible for the vascular system, especially if there's any damage to the vascular system when it comes to like things such as diabetes or bad circulation, things of that nature. These things just have a great improvement in the eyes, right? So bilberry does another thing too. It seems to remove excessive amounts of sugar that's in the eye. There's all these studies on bilberry. The coolest study ever though, World War II pilots. So the pilots that were from Britain that ate bilberry jam before they'd go out at night had better eye vision than the other people that did not. Really cool moment, kind of an awesome related moment. All right, so finally, this one's kind of a fun one too. When it comes to it, Bright Eyes. Bright Eyes is by a company. This particular product is actually acetyl L-carnosine, not carnitine, acetyl L-carnosine. And so what happens with this product is they actually found it's a very powerful antioxidant for the eye when used internally, helps prevent glycosylation of proteins, but they put it in a drop. So this ultimately is a drug fax, and it's just like typical eye drops. But then the inactive ingredient is this L-carnosine. And so what they found is about 3 to 4 drops throughout the day for 3 to 6 months. I probably would say 6 months. Actually, individuals with cataracts had improved eyesight. Kind of a cool moment. So definitely something to think about. Finally, the last thing I brought with me too, this is the classic. Here's the Dr. Christopher formula. It's called Eyebrite. Nature's Way makes it. It's the classic Dr. Christopher formula that was used by Joe, the lady that worked with my grandfather. That formula has been on our shelf ever since I started in the stores. A lot of people love it. It's got in it which is, of course, great stuff. Eyebrite, an herb, which is great for all sorts of different things in the eyes, allergies and things of that nature. Raspberry, which kind of helps with the water balance. Also has some golden seal and some cayenne pepper, the original form of kind of cool stuff to like wrap up the day. All right. Well, thanks again for listening to another episode. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you guys for joining us today on our Mission Nutrition podcast, the official Clark's Nutrition and Natural Foods Market podcast. We've got another exciting episode for you next week, so be sure to review, subscribe, follow us, and stay connected.
Absolutely, be part of it. We've got so much we're going to share with you. It's going to be an amazing ride.
We'll see you next time.